welcome to Sheeran Guitar Tutorials. My name's David, and in today's lesson, I'll be teaching you how Ed Sheeran plays You Need Me, I Don't Need You live on a loop station. Now, a couple things before we jump into the lesson. The version I'll be going over today is the version he's been playing on the Mathematic Tour. The reason I bring that up is because this song probably has the most number of different variations that he's played live in his career. So because of that, it makes it a little tricky for one tutorial to cover every version of the song. So I'm just letting you know that this tutorial will cover how he's been playing the song on the Mathematics and Loop Tour. Next, you'll need to make sure your guitar is in drop D tuning, and an easy way to do that is to put a capo on the 2nd fret of your guitar, and then you want to tune your low E string back down to the note it normally is in standard tuning. When you remove the capo, then your guitar will be in drop D tuning. Now that you have your guitar in drop D tuning, put a capo on the 2nd fret and let's jump on in. So we'll start at the beginning with setting up the loop. You're going to be on whatever track you want your guitar playing into. For me, that's track number 1. And you're going to be playing that iconic first guitar riff. So real quick, this is how this riff should sound. And it's really very simple. You're going to put your index on the 3rd fret of the B string and your ring finger on the 5th fret of the high E string. From there, you're just plucking the B string and then the E string 4 times in total. But right after you pluck the high E string for the 4th time, you're going to slide your ring finger up the neck of the guitar along the high E string to approximately the 11th-ish fret or so. So this whole riff, including the slide, would sound like this. And that's all for the guitar part. If you wanted to, though, you can do what Ed does right before playing the riff and add a muted down strum. So to include that to the riff, it would look like this. Alright, so now let's look at the pedal work. First, that muted down strum I just mentioned happens before you actually press the record button on your looper, so just keep that in mind. You're not adding that to the loop. So you start by pressing the record button right when you make that first pluck on the B string, and so that's why it's highlighted in orange on the screen. You would then play the whole riff, and then you would press the overdub button kind of right when you get to the 11th-ish fret on the high E, and that's why that's shown in yellow. And exactly where you press the overdub button to get a perfect loop can be a little tricky, so you kind of just have to play around with it. I should point out too that once you press the overdub button, you've now established your loop length for this first part of the song, and in our case that's about 3 seconds. So that's just something to keep in mind as I'll reference the loop length throughout the video. But that's really it for layer 1 of track 1. So now I'll just show you how to add this to our loopers. Alright, so now we're moving on to layer 2 of track 1, and this is where that second guitar riff comes in. And so let me play it for you first real quick, just so you know how it should sound. And so this one is a little bit more tricky than the first one, but it's still not too bad. Basically, what you're going to want to do is bar the 12th fret of the D and G strings with your index finger. So you're going to start by plucking the 12th fret of the D string and then hammering on to the 14th fret of the D string using your ring finger. From there, you're going to want to release your ring finger and pluck the 12th fret of the G string. So those first 3 notes sound like this. And right after you pluck that 12th fret of the G string, you're going to want to put your ring finger onto the 14th fret there. From there, you're going to pluck the 12th fret of the D string again, and then you're going to quickly pluck the 14th fret of the G string and pull off to the 12th fret of the D string. So those 3 notes would sound like this. So the first 6 notes together would sound like this. You would then repeat what we just did, so a pluck on the 12th fret of the D string, a pluck on the 14th fret of the G string, pulling off to the 12th fret of the G string, And then you would pluck the 14th fret of the D string again and slide down the neck of the guitar to somewhere approximately being like the 7th fret. So that last little section would sound like this. And so everything all together for the second riff here would sound like this. So that's it for the guitar part. As far as looping goes, you're already overdubbing onto track 1, so you just want to add the second guitar riff over the first guitar riff that we just recorded. And so that's it. So now I'll show you how to add layer 2 of track 1 to our loopers. Alright, so moving on now, we're switching to whatever track you want to record your beatboxing into. For me, that's track number 2. And so basically, as you finish that second guitar riff for layer 2 of track 1, you would let that play out one time through its loop length. And while that's happening is when you would switch to track number 2. And we actually start recording things into track number 2 nearing the end of the loop length. So basically, as you're nearing the end, you would sing that woo I have shown up on the screen highlighted in yellow. And I think that happens right around where the slides on the guitar riffs happen. So after that woo, that would then bring us into the beatboxing portion of this layer. Now, just to preface this, I've never beatboxed before. I've never taught anybody how to beatbox before. What I have shown on the screen is a combination of 10 minutes of Google searching how to annotate beatboxing and some of my own imagination. So if you're looking at this and thinking, what the hell is this? I'm sorry. However, what I have shown are all of the beatboxing sounds that Ed makes when performing this song, so let's dive on it. First, let me show you how this whole thing should sound. Woo! The first line here of the beatboxing starts right at the beginning of the loop length, and you see a B and a CH. The B's are supposed to tell you to make a bassy kind of sound, so like a, and the CH's are supposed to be a scratching kind of sound, so sk, sk, sk. So this first line just sounds like this. And you can kind of hear how that bass sound sort of melts into that scratching sound. Line 2 starts with 2 more bass sounds and a scratching sound. So that would sound like this. So altogether, so far, we have this. The next 2 sounds are pretty self-explanatory. They're just ch sounds. So ch, ch. So the first 2 lines of the beatboxing section sound like this. Line 3 has us back at the beginning of the loop length again and starts the same as line 2 with 2 bass sounds and a scratch sound. So again, that sounds like this. But then line 3 of the beatboxing section ends with some new sounds. The letters KY kind of sound like the word key, so they sound like this. And the KAH letters kind of sound like this. So these 3 sounds here would sound like this. And together, line 3 of the beatboxing sounds would sound like this. Moving on to line 4, there's nothing new. It's just a bass sound, a scratch sound, and then 2 ch sounds. So again, that sounds like this. So all together, the first 4 lines of beatboxing sound like this. And then the last line starts with 2 bass sounds again. And then the last sort of word I have there is supposed to kind of sound like an exhale. Cha. Cha. So it kind of sounds like you're saying like cha or something. Cha. Cha. I don't know, maybe I'm way off, but if you watch Ed perform this song live, he does make that sound. So this last line of beatboxing would just sound like this. So all together, including the woo at the very beginning, all of track 2 sounds like this. Woo! So now I'll show you how to add all of this to track 2 of our looper. Moving on with building up the song, we're now going to add some percussion to the looper. So switch to whatever track you want to add the percussion to. For me, that's track number 3. And you're going to play what I have shown on the screen. So just to play it for you real quick, it should sound like this. So just breaking down what I have shown on the screen right now, the uppercase X's are where you would slap your guitar over the sound hole using your right hand. The uppercase D's that are underlined means those are muted strums. And then the lowercase X's are actually optional, and it's where you would slap the neck of the guitar with your left hand here. So like I mentioned, they are optional to include. You don't have to do them. If you play this without the lowercase X's, it would still sound great. But Ed does include those lowercase X's when he plays the song live, if you're watching videos there. So if you want to play it exactly how he does it, include them, but they're not necessarily needed. In fact, this is what it would look like if you don't include those lowercase X's. I'll just play this for you right now. And so again, if you don't want to include those lowercase X's, leave them out. Everything would still sound great. All right, so let's assume you do want to use the lowercase X's when you play this track. Let's break it down a little bit. It starts with just a slap on the neck of the guitar using your left hand, and then a slap near the sound hole of the guitar using your right hand. And you would do that twice. From there, you would do another slap with your left hand, and then a muted down strum. So these first 3 sections would sound like this. From there, it would be 2 slaps on the neck of the guitar with your left hand, and then another slap on the neck of the guitar with your left hand, followed by a slap near the sound hole with your right hand. So everything so far would sound like this. And then you just finish with a muted down strum, followed by another slap on the neck of the guitar with your left hand. So really slowly, this whole line one time through would sound like this. And so as you can see on the screen, I have us playing this 2 times. It's not actually needed. If you play this 1 time, that does cover the entirety of the loop length, but Ed will play it twice, I'm assuming just to have the percussion stand out a little bit. All right, so that's everything with playing the guitar. As far as loop work goes, assuming, you're overdubbing, you're adding the percussion to track number 3, you finish this whole line here, you play it 2 times through. From there, you would press whatever button you need to press to stop overdubbing, so to take your looper out of overdub mode. You would then switch to track number 1, and then you would put your looper in whatever mute mode that you have, because you're about to get ready to play the intro of the song. And so that's why that last X is highlighted in yellow. It's to show you that once you get there for the 2nd time, you would then press all of those buttons on your looper to prep to get into the intro of the song. And that's it. So now I'll show you how to add all of this to track 3 of our loopers. Alright, so we've actually completed the loop setup of the song now. So now I'll show you how to add everything we've just went over into your loopers all in one go, and then transition into the intro of the song. So we're at the point where you're actually about to play guitar, so I thought it was a good time to show you the chords and strumming that you're going to need for this song. And so something to keep in mind, all the chords that I'm showing you are all relative to the capo. All right, first chord up is kind of like a D5 power chord, which is played like this. Next is a D sus4, played like this. Next is a G5, played like this. Ed will also sometimes play the G5 kind of like this. So it's up to you which way you want to play it. Next is an A5, played like this. Similar to the G5, Ed will sometimes play the A5 like this. So again, up to you which version you want. Next chord is sort of an A sharp 5 chord, played like this. A C5 chord, played like this. What I'm calling sort of a G prime chord, which is basically just using your middle finger to kind of pull down the 3rd fret of the low E string. And you kind of want to focus near the bassier strings. It's okay if you get some of the higher strings in there as well. But what you really want when you strum this chord is pulling down with your middle finger. You can see how that sounds different. That's without pulling down. Pulling down just kind of makes it a little more distorted, makes it kind of sound cooler. So that's the G prime. Next is a D5 prime chord, which is played like this. Next, we have a D minor 11 chord, played like this. A D minor 7 chord, played like this. A weird kind of F chord, which is played like this. A C chord, played like this. And then this last chord I have shown, I just labeled as slide. And so if you've seen Ed play this song live, you'll know at one part during the bridge, he's kind of sliding up the neck of the guitar while he's just strumming really fast. So I don't know what to call that, but basically you want to use your middle finger, and it looks like he's kind of fretting the low E, the A, and the D strings. And then he's just kind of sliding up the neck of the guitar as he strums up and down really fast. So that part just kind of sounds like this. I don't know. It's a slide. All right, so looking at strumming now, there's about 7 or so, maybe 8 strumming patterns you need for this whole song if you want to play it how Ed does it. Just a caveat before we start, if you've looked at Ed playing songs live at all, you'll know that every time he does it is ever so slightly different. So there's a very good chance that one of these or most of these strumming patterns are off by a strum or 2. That's just kind of what it is. What I have shown here is my best representation of how Ed plays this song live. So before we start, you'll see that some strums are underlined. That's to tell you that they should be muted strums. So we'll go over that when we get to it. There's also some strums that are bolded. That's just to tell you to give them a little more emphasis, make them a little bit louder. There's also one strum in there that has a couple lowercase letters. Those are optional strums. If you want to include them, you can, but I won't be including them in this tutorial. All right, so starting with strumming pattern number 1, I'll first show you how to play it totally muted, and then I'll get into the unmuted and muted parts of it. So pattern 1 would just sound like this. And so if you want to throw in the kind of muted strums along with the unmuted strums for that, we can play this strumming pattern on a G5 chord that we learned before. And would basically start with 2 unmuted down strums. And then you would kind of mute whatever chord you're playing, so you kind of lessen the pressure in your fretting hand to do a down, up, down, up, down, up. So those first 2 parts sound like this. You then fret the chord again, so the notes ring out, and do a down, up strum. But right after that up strum, you're going to loosen the pressure in your fretting hand to mute it, and do another muted down strum. So these 3 strums here would sound like this. And then you fret the chord again for just a final up, down, up. So all together, playing strumming pattern number 1 on a G5 would sound like this. So it's kind of hard to get the fretting hand in rhythm with the strumming hand, but just play around with it a little bit, you'll be able to get it. Strumming pattern number 2 is a little bit easier. If you discard the optional down strums, it would sound like this. And obviously, if you're playing that on a chord, it would sound like this. Strumming pattern number 3 is very easy. It would sound like this. And again, on a G5 chord, it would sound like this. Pattern number 4 has some muted and unmuted portions. So let me show you it first entirely muted. It would sound like this. And to play that on like the G prime chord, it would kind of sound like this. And you'll notice that a couple of those strums are bolded. You just kind of want to give them a little more emphasis. So strumming pattern number 4 without the bolded strums would kind of sound like this. But with the bolded strums, it's... Moving on to strumming pattern number 5 now. This is how it would sound. And this is a strumming pattern where those bolded strums are definitely needed to give the rhythm that you kind of want. Because without the bolded strums, pattern 5 would sound like this. But with them, it sounds like this. So just to play this on like a D5 prime chord, strumming pattern 5 would sound like this. And then you'll notice I also have kind of a strumming pattern 5A, and it has some muted strums. That's because there's a part later on this song that's a little tricky because it mutes some of the strums in strumming pattern number 5. So I thought it made sense to make it its own strumming pattern here. So again, you're literally doing the same exact strumming with your right hand. You're just now kind of pulsing or pumping your fretting hand to mute and unmute whatever chord you're playing at the appropriate times. So still on a D5 prime chord, strumming pattern 5A would sound like this. So just to show you the differences, normal strumming pattern 5 sounds like this. And strumming pattern 5A sounds like this. Moving on to strumming pattern 6 now. This is how it would sound. And then finally, you have strumming pattern number 7, which is all just muted, and it sounds like this. Alright, so now that we know the chords and the strumming, let's continue with the song. Alright, so now we're into the intro of the song. In most performances I've watched him play, he'll play the intro one time. However, sometimes he does play the intro twice, so if you want to do that, play the intro twice. However, in this tutorial, I'll just be playing the intro once. And so the intro is pretty easy. We'll start with the guitar part. It's just 2 lines of chords shown up on the screen. Starting with line 1, you have that G prime chord playing 4 down strums on it. From there, you would move to the D5 chord and play strumming pattern 1 once. You would then move to the G5 chord and play strumming pattern 1 once on that as well. So all of line 1 together would sound like this. Moving on to line 2 now. You're on your A5 chord, playing strumming pattern 1 once. You would then play the A sharp 5 chord once, using pattern number 3. You would then play the first half of strumming pattern 3 once on the C5 chord. And then 1 final down strum on your G prime again. So all of line 2 would sound like this. So all together, the guitar part for the intro would sound like this. Alright, so that's the guitar part. Let's look at the pedal work. So basically, you're coming off of building up the song where you have tracks 1, 2, and 3 playing. And then to start the intro, when you go to do that first down strum on the G prime chord, you would press stop on your looper. So that's what's highlighted in yellow for that first down strum. You would then play that G prime chord. And then right when you go to do the first down strum on your D5 is when you would play all your tracks again. And so all those tracks are playing out when you play the D5, the G5, everything up until you get to that last strum on the G prime, which is highlighted in blue, at which point you would mute track number 3, because then you're getting into verse number 1. So now I'll show you how to transition from building up the song into the intro, how to play the intro, and then transition into verse number 1. Okay, so getting into verse number 1 now, I have it actually broken into 4 different parts to make it a little bit easier to digest, because each part is pretty different, especially in terms of kind of what you're doing with the looper. So starting with the guitar part of part 1 of verse 1, I have chords and strumming shown up on the screen. However, you don't actually play any of it until you get to the strum highlighted in orange. You could play what I have shown up on the screen on your guitar the whole time if you want to. However, Ed doesn't actually play guitar here when he performs this song live. He just lets tracks 1 and 2 play out on his looper while he sings. And the reason I have chords and strumming shown on the screen, even though you're not actually playing it, is just to give you a sense on where you are in the song, and it makes it a little easier to tell you when to turn on and off certain tracks. So yeah, as far as guitar goes, if you're playing it how Ed Sheeran does live, you just let it play out, and the only guitar part you play here is that last down strum on the G prime. And there's not even really any pedal work here either. You just let tracks 1 and 2 play out. So part 1 of verse 1 is really easy. So now I'll show you how to transition from the intro into part 1 of verse 1, how to play part 1 of verse 1, and then transition into part 2 of verse 1. Moving on to part 2 of verse number 1 now, and you are actually playing guitar this time. So let's start with the guitar. It's just 2 lines of chords again. You start on your D5, and you're going to play strumming pattern 2 1 time. You then switch to your G5 and play strumming pattern 2 once. So all of line 1 here would sound like this. Line 2 then starts on your A5, where again you're playing strumming pattern 2 once. From there you go to your A sharp 5 and do 1 down strum, and then you actually skip the C5. You're not playing it this time. You would go straight to the G prime, and you're basically doing a muted down up strum, and then you would do a down up strum. And I have some strums bolded there just to give it a little extra emphasis if you want to do that. So the G prime at the very end would sound like this. So altogether, line 2 would sound like this. Moving on to looping now, you start this part with still tracks 1 and 2 playing out, and when you get to the strum highlighted in yellow is when you would hit stop on your looper, and you would also unmute track number 3. So that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 1 of verse 1 into part 2 of verse 1, how to play part 2 of verse 1, and then transition into part 3 of verse 1. Moving on to part 3 of verse 1 now. It's just 2 lines of chords again, and you are playing guitar here. So starting with line 1, you have your D5 chord, and you're playing strumming pattern 1 once. Go to your G5 and play strumming pattern 1 once. So all of line 1 sounds like this. Line 2 starts with the A5 chord, playing strumming pattern 1 once. A sharp 5 chord, playing strumming pattern 3 once. C5, playing half of strumming pattern 3 once. And then a final down strum on your G prime. So all of line 2 sounds like this. And all of part 3 of verse number 1 sounds like this. far as looping goes, it's pretty easy here. All you really do is hit play at the very beginning here, at that first down strum highlighted in orange, and that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 2 of verse 1 into part 3 of verse 1, how to play part 3 of verse 1, and then transition into part 4 of verse 1. Looking at part 4 of verse 1 now, and starting with the guitar. Again, your first line of chords are that D5 and G5, played once with strumming pattern 1. I've gone over that a couple times now, so I won't do that again. When you get to line 2 here, it's a little bit different now. When you get to your A5 chord, it's just one down strum. Moving to the A sharp 5 now, you start with a muted down, down, up strum, before 3 more down strums. And then you end on your G prime again with a single down strum. So all of line 2 here would sound like this. So altogether, part 4 of verse 1 for the guitar part would sound like this. The looping part is a little bit more involved here. You have tracks 1 through 3 playing out on your looper. When you get to that A5 strum highlighted in yellow, you would hit stop there. And then you have this kind of alternating back and forth play, stop going on. And so you're doing that at the strums that I have highlighted on the screen. So that first down strum that rings out on the A sharp 5, you would play everything. The next down strum you would stop. Next down strum you would play. And then you would stop again. And there actually isn't a strum that goes on here. So that's why this section is just highlighted in between the A sharp 5 and the G prime chord. And so that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 3 of verse 1 into part 4 of verse 1, how to play part 4 of verse 1, and then transition into the chorus. Alright, so now I'll show you how to transition from the intro into verse number 1, how to play all 4 parts of verse number 1 together, and then transition into chorus 1. Alright, so moving on to chorus 1 now. It's just 2 lines of chords again, played through 2 times. However, some performances I've seen recently have Ed only playing chorus 1 through once. So if you want to do that, just play these chords 1 time through. However, most of his performances have him play chorus 1 twice. So that's what I'm going to do here in this tutorial. Alright, so starting with the guitar part, we're back to that D5 chord, and we're playing strumming pattern 2 once. Move to your G5 chord, play strumming pattern 2 once. So all of line 1 sounds like this. Line 2 starts on your A5, where you play strumming pattern 2 once. Then you're at your A sharp 5 chord, playing strumming pattern 3 once. You're at your C5 chord, playing the first half of strumming pattern 3 once. And then a down strum on your G prime. So all of line number 2 would sound like this. And all together, 1 time through chorus 1 would sound like this. As far as pedal work goes, it's pretty easy. when you're going to do that first down strum on your D5 highlighted in orange is when you would press play and you're playing out tracks 1, 2, and 3. You would then let these play out the entire time. And when you get to that strum highlighted in blue for the G prime, the second time through the chorus, you would just mute track number 3 because that brings you into verse number 2. That's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 4 of verse number 1 into chorus 1, how to play chorus 1, and then transition into verse number 2. Alright, so now we're into verse number 2, and similar to verse number 1, I have this broken down into 4 parts, because each part is pretty different. On the screen right now is part number 1. And so similar to part 1 of verse 1, part 1 of verse 2 has no guitar playing the entire time, and you don't even do a down strum on that last G prime chord. Now what I have shown for part 1 of verse number 2 is how Ed has been playing this recently. There is sort of an older version that he used to play that does involve playing some guitar and starting and stopping the loops and all that. If you would like to play that one, I have that shown up on the screen right now. However, I won't be going into the details on how to play this. So if you want to learn how to play this, pause the video now, take a look at my notes and everything, and give it a go. Leave me a comment down below though if you have any questions. Moving forward in this tutorial though, I'll be using the newer version of part 1 of verse number 2 for my lesson. Okay, so like I said, you're not playing any guitar here. You have tracks 1 and 2 playing out on your looper, and you're not really changing anything on the looper throughout this part of verse number 2. It's really just Ed singing. And that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from chorus 1 into part 1 of verse number 2, how to play part 1 of verse number 2, and then transition into part 2 of verse number 2. On to part 2 of verse number 2, and this one's interesting as well. What I have shown up on the screen is what Ed has been playing in his recent performances. However, this part also has an older version that he used to play, which I'm showing on the screen now. So again, if you want to learn this older version, pause the video now, take a look at my notes, and learn that. However, moving forward in this tutorial, I'll be using the newer version of part 2 of verse number 2. Okay, so starting with the guitar part for this part, you're not actually playing any guitar until you get to that strum highlighted in yellow. So your D5, your G5, and your A5, you're not playing guitar here, unless you really want to. Ed doesn't, but if you want to, then do it. So when you do get to that A sharp 5 chord, it's just a down strum, and then the G prime is actually exactly what we did for part 2 of verse number 1, if you'll remember. So it's a muted down up strum, and then a down up strum. So just as a reminder, that G prime chord sounds like this. So the A sharp 5 to the G prime, if you just want to see how that's played, would sound like this. So that's all the guitar playing you're doing here for part 2 of verse number 2. The looping, however, is a little interesting. So you have tracks 1 and 2 playing out the entire time. And basically what you're going to do is at the strums highlighted in orange, you're going to unmute track number 3, and then at approximately the strums highlighted in blue, you would mute track number 3 again. So it's just kind of a quick boop, 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 boop at the beginning of the D5, the G5, and the A5 chords. Meanwhile, tracks 1 and 2 are still playing out the entire time. Okay, so you do the unmute, mute 3 times, but then when you get to that strum highlighted in yellow, you're not only playing guitar, but you would stop all of your tracks, and you would unmute track number 3 for good this time. So you sort of have a little bit of footwork and guitar playing going on all of a sudden there, so it can get a little bit tricky. But that's really it for part 2 of verse number 2 for the newer version of how Ed plays this song. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 1 of verse number 2 into part 2 of verse number 2, how to play part 2 of verse number 2, and then transition into part 3 of verse number 2. So now we're on to part 3 of verse number 2, And this is exactly the same as part 3 of verse number 1, so refer back to that section for all the details. What I will do though is show you how to transition from part 2 of verse 2 into part 3 of verse 2, how to play part 3 of verse 2, and then transition into part 4 of verse 2. Now we're on to part 4 of verse number 2, and this is almost exactly the same as part 4 of verse number 1. The only difference is the D5 and the G5 now use strumming pattern 2 instead of strumming pattern 1. That's it. And because I've gone over those strumming patterns a lot already, I won't be showing you them again here. So other than that, refer back to part 4 of verse number 1 for the details on how to play this part. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 3 of verse number 2 into part 4 of verse number 2, how to play part 4 of verse number 2, and then transition into chorus 2. So now, just to give you an idea, I'll show you how to transition from chorus 1 into verse number 2, how to play all 4 parts of verse number 2, one right after another without stopping, and then transition into chorus 2. Getting into chorus 2 now, I have this chorus broken up into 2 parts just because there's a little bit of looping differences between them, so I thought this might be easier. However, part 1 of chorus 2 is exactly the same as what we went over in chorus 1, so refer back to that section for the details on how to play part 1 of chorus 2. So now I'll show you how to transition from the end of verse number 2 into part 1 of chorus 2, how to play part 1 of chorus 2, and then transition into part 2 of chorus 2. On to part 2 of chorus 2 now. The first 3 chords are played exactly the same as what we've played in the choruses before. The differences come in when you get to the A sharp 5. So the A sharp 5 is now just a down strum. And you'll notice there is no C5 or G prime chord. So just to play it for you, part 2 of chorus 2 would sound like this. As far as looping goes, for both parts 1 and part 2 of the chorus, you obviously have all 3 tracks playing out. But when you get to part 2 of the chorus, you're now going to set up your looper to transition into the bridge of the song. So at that first down strum for your D5 that I have highlighted in orange, I have you selecting the mode button on your looper to take it out of mute mode. I also have you selecting track number 2, because when we get into the bridge, the first thing you're going to record is your vocals again. So for me, track 2 is the vocals. However, if your vocals are on a different track, you would select that track. All right, so you take your looper out of mute mode, you put the looper onto whatever track you're recording your vocals in, you're playing your D5, your G5, your A5, you'd play the down strum on the A sharp 5, and after that you're going to want to quickly mute your guitar, because then what you're going to do is put your looper back into overdub mode to get ready for the bridge. All right, so now I'll show you how to transition from part 1 of chorus 2 into part 2 of chorus 2, how to play part 2 of chorus 2, and then transition into the bridge. Alright, so now I'll show you how to transition from the end of verse number 2 into chorus 2, how to play both parts of chorus 2, and then transition into the bridge. now we're into the bridge of the song, and this is where things start to get pretty fun. You're on track 2 of your looper. Your looper is in overdub mode. We did all that at the end of chorus number 2. And now you're going to be adding some extra layers of vocals to the beatboxing that you added to this track at the beginning of the song. So the first thing you're overlaying here is going to be singing ooh. And these vocals will start basically at the beginning of your loop length. So you would sing them, fill the loop length once with that. And then the next time you're going through the loop length, when your looper is playing back the oohs that you just sang, that's when you would start to sing, "You need me, man, I don't need you." And you would sing that 3 times in total, one right after the other. And so you might have noticed already, there's actually multiple layers going on here because you're singing the words over and over again. I just find it easier to think of this bit as one chunk as opposed to 4 separate chunks. So now I'll show you how to transition from the end of the chorus into part 1 of the bridge, how to play part 1 of the bridge, and then transition into part 2 of the bridge. Alright, so now we're on to part 2 of the bridge. And this part has us back on track 1 of our looper, or whatever track you've been putting your guitar into, because now we're going to add some extra guitar on top of the riffs that we added to this track at the beginning of the song. So just to start with the guitar part, you start with the D5 chord, and you're playing strumming pattern 5 on this 1 time, which would sound like this. You would then move to that D5 prime chord and play strumming pattern 5 again on it, but this time you would play it twice. And then you would end with just 4 down strums on the D5 prime chord. So altogether, the guitar part of part 2 of the bridge would sound like this. So you might have guessed already, this is actually 3 layers. You know, each part that's highlighted in orange is the start of a new loop length. I just think it's easier to think of this guitar part as 1 bit as opposed to 3 separate bits. And that's it really. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 1 of the bridge into part 2 of the bridge, how to play part 2 of the bridge, and then transition into part 3 of the bridge. Alright, so now we're on to part 3 of the bridge, and this has us back on whatever track that you've been adding your percussion and snare into. For me, that's track number 3. And so similar to previous parts, this is actually 3 different layers, but again, I find it just easier to think of all of this as 1 bit as opposed to 3 separate layers. However, each part highlighted in orange is the start of the new loop length. And so this is pretty easy here. The first part I have shown is just 8 smacks on the guitar right around the sound hole. So that would sound like this. The next line there is just basically doubling that. So now you're doing 16 smacks on the guitar right around the sound hole. And this is pretty fast. So those first 2 lines would sound like this. And this last line here is just 4 slaps on the guitar, a little bit more spaced out this time though. So it would sound like this. And then you do 2 quick smacks, and then 1 final one. So this last line would kind of sound like this. So altogether, all 3 lines I have shown here for the percussion for part 3 of the bridge would sound like this. And that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 2 of the bridge into part 3 of the bridge, how to play part 3 of the bridge, and then transition into part 4 of the bridge. So now we're on to part 4 of the bridge, and this is where it gets really fun. I have us back on whatever track we've been recording the guitar into, and so it's sort of weird to describe exactly what you're doing here. But if you watch Ed play live, he'll basically do this slide up the neck of the guitar, starting maybe around the 7th chord or so, where he's using his middle finger to fret the low E, the A, and the D strings. And he's just sliding up the neck of the guitar over the course of 3 loop lengths or so. And as he slides up, he's just basically strumming as fast as he possibly can, which sort of would sound like this. You get the idea. He slides, like I said, from approximately the 7th fret to maybe the 16th fret or so over the course of 2.5 to 3 loop lengths. And that's really it for this entire part of the bridge. But like I said, these are all approximates on where to start on the neck of the guitar. So I'll leave that up to you for what you like. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 3 of the bridge into part 4 of the bridge, how to play part 4 of the bridge, and then transition into the break. Alright, so now we're at the break of the song, and this is basically where you're clearing out everything in your looper that we've been adding so far in this song, and you're getting it ready to start fresh for what I'm going to call is just the second half of the song. So there's guitar part here and some looping, so let me start with the guitar. Starting on that D5 prime chord, playing strumming pattern 5 once, so that would sound like this. And so kind of what you want to do here with your fretting hand is when you see those bolded strums, you want to apply the pressure to fret the note for that strum, but after those strums, you kind of want to lessen the pressure in your strumming hand to kind of mute the strings a little bit more. And that's at least what you would do for kind of the first 2 blocks of strumming I have for that D5 prime chord. For the last down, up, you're kind of just playing all 4 of those strums there. But for the first 2 parts, it should kind of sound like this. You can see how that's different then. Either way works. It just seems like Ed will kind of pump that fretting hand when he plays this. After that first D5 prime chord, you would move to that normal D5 chord, and you're playing that same strumming pattern 5 here. It's just for 1 strum, you're throwing in that D sus4, and that's what's shown in blue. So just to play this for you, it would sound like this. And you can tell you're not doing sort of that fretted hand pumping muting motion like you did for the D5 prime. So this just starts with a down, up, up on your D5. And then the next section starts with your D sus4 for a down strum before hammering back on to your D5 and finishing that strumming block. So that would sound like this. And then you finish on a down, up. So this whole block again sounds like this. So again, all together, 1 time through the break would sound like this. So basically, you would play this line of chords twice to complete the break. So that's it for the guitar part. As far as looping goes, coming into the break, you have everything going on your looper. You got tracks 1, 2, and 3 all playing. And when you get to that first down strum on your D5 prime chord, you're basically just holding down whatever button you have to clear out your looper as you're playing the break. Because like I said, you're getting your looper ready for the second half of the song where we're adding totally new sounds to it. So that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 4 of the bridge into the break, how to play the break, and then transition into the second half of the song setup. Alright, so now we're into what I'm calling the second half setup part of the song. If you've watched Ed play this song live, you'll know that he sets up the song, he plays it, and then he clears everything out of his looper that he initially put in there, and he adds all new stuff to get ready for sort of the wrapping second half part of the song. So what we're looking at right now is part 1 of what I'm calling the second half setup. So what we're going to do is just add guitar into whatever track we've been adding guitar to, and it's just this 1 line of chords that we're going to play. It seems a little daunting at first, but the colors I have shown is just to show you what chords to strum for what strumming pattern. And the strumming pattern we're using is mostly strumming pattern 5 that we went over before. And similar to other times where we've used strumming pattern 5, in your fretting hand, you're going to want to do that muting and unmuting bit around the strums I have bolded. So starting with the first block of chords, you have a D minor 11 to a D minor 7, and the strumming that you're going to be playing for these two chords is just this. And so that D minor 11 only gets played for that first down strum, because then you hammer on to your D minor 7 to finish this strumming bit. And so again, like I mentioned, you kind of want to throw in that sort of pumping with your fretting hand to mute some of the strums here. So just to show you, that D minor 11, D minor 7 part would sound like this. From there, you're moving to that F chord. And again, you're kind of doing those pumps around the bolded strums. So the F would sound like this. You would then slide down the neck of the guitar to your C chord and play the same strumming that you played on the D minor 11 and D minor 7. So your C would sound like this. You would then go to your D minor 7 again and play that same strumming. And this is where the strumming starts to change a little bit from strumming pattern 5. After that D minor 7, you would do a down up on your G prime, and then a down up on your D5 chord. So this whole entire second half would sound like this. And all together, the guitar part here sounds like this. So that's the guitar part you're playing. As far as looping goes, you would of course press record right when you go to do that first down strum on your D minor 11. And then where you press the overdub can be a little bit tricky. Basically, you're going to press it kind of right as you go to do that first down strum on your D5 chord at the very end, which is highlighted in blue. So what that technically means is that D5 is overlaid over the D minor 11 and D minor 7 portion you played at the very beginning. And so pressing that overdub button correctly can definitely be a little tricky, so definitely take some time and learn that. So that's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from the break into part 1 of the second half setup, how to play part 1 of the second half setup, and then transition into part 2 of the second half setup. Alright, so on to part 2 of the second half setup, and this is much easier than the first part. Basically, you're still on the track that you're adding guitar to. For me, again, that's track number 1. And all you're doing here is basically repeating playing the G prime and D5 that you played in the previous part. And these chords just line up with where they're played in the previous layer. And because I went over how to play these in part 1 of the second half setup, I won't show you how to play them again, but I will show you how to transition from part 1 of the second half setup into part 2 of the second half setup, how to play part 2 of the second half setup, and then transition into part 3 of the second half setup. Alright, on to part 3 of the second half setup of the song now, and we're going to add a little bit of percussion. So you want to switch to whatever track you're adding your percussion and snare to. And this layer here is very easy. It's just 4 smacks on the guitar using your right hand, kind of near the sound hole, which would sound like this. And these smacks on the guitar kind of line up with the down up that you strum for the D5 chord in the previous layers. So now I'll show you how to transition from part 2 of the second half setup into part 3 of the second half setup, how to play part 3 of the second half setup, and then transition into part 4 of the second half setup. Alright, so now we're on to part 4 of the second half setup, and this is where you're going to be doing some more guitar playing and some more vocals. So for this, because you're recording vocals and guitar at the same time, Ed will use its own track, probably because it has the correct presets and effects to make vocals and guitar sound good at the same time. So for me, I record this into track 4 of my looper. You could record this into the track that already has guitar in it. That's up to you. So starting first with the guitar part, let me show you how this should sound. So breaking the guitar part down, you're using strumming pattern 6, and I have highlighted on the screen what chords you're playing for each part of that strumming pattern. And overall, what you're playing here on guitar is pretty similar to what you played during part 1 of the second half setup, just to keep that in mind. So looking at the first part, you have the D minor 11 and the D minor 7. It's just a down strum on the D minor 11 before hammering on for the D minor 7. And the strumming you're doing here is just the 3 down up strums. So this would sound like this. You would then move up to the F chord for the next part, which would sound like this. So the D minor 11, D minor 7, F portion sounds like this. You then kind of move down the neck of the guitar to the C and play a down up portion with a little bit of emphasis on that last up strum. And you're also kind of doing that pulsing that we talked about with strumming pattern 5 here. You then do that same strumming on a D minor 11, hammering on to a D minor 7, which would sound like this. And then you just end on a down up, normal strumming for a D minor 11, hammering on to a D minor 7, which would sound like this. So that last C, D minor 11, D minor 7 portion would sound like this. And so all of that would comprise one time through this strumming pattern. If you watch Ed play this song live, he plays this 3 times in total. So if you want to do that, do it 3 times. However, 1 time will fully fill the loop length. So one more time, just to play this strumming pattern through twice, this is how it would sound. So that's the guitar part. At the same time, Ed will also do some singing, so I have that shown up on the screen right now. And I try and have the words line up with the approximate strums that he's playing while he's singing those words. And so the words are just, oh, na 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 na. And so again, he's playing that strumming pattern 3 times, so that means he's singing these words 3 times as well. However, if you wanted to break these up and just do the strumming and then do the singing afterwards, that's totally fine. It'll just take a little longer to set up the song. So with all that out of the way, let me show you now how to transition from part 3 of the second half setup into part 4 of the second half setup, how to play part 4 of the second half setup, and then transition into part 5 of the second half setup. So now we're into part 5 of the second half setup, and this is where some percussion and snare is coming in. So for me, I'm doing that into track 3 of my looper, but you would choose whatever track that you're recording percussion and snare into. And so the same thing goes here as went for layer 1 of track 3 when we were initially setting up the song. Uppercase X's are slaps with your right hand near the sound hole of the guitar. Lowercase X's are optional, and they're slapping the neck of the guitar with your left hand. And then the underlined D's are just muted down strums, which you should include. And so looking at the first line that I have for us to record here, this is the exact same thing that we went over during layer 1 of track 3 during the initial song setup in this tutorial. So refer back to that section of this tutorial for those details. However, I'll just play it for you a couple times here just to remind you. And again, if you don't want to do the lowercase x's, this line would just sound like this. So that's how you would play this first line. You'll notice I have us playing this 2 times in total because that will cover our new loop length. Moving on to the second line here now. This one is a bit more scary, but it's not too bad, especially if you leave out the lowercase x's. So going part by part, The first part is just 2 quick smacks on the guitar with your right hand. The next chunk I have is an up-down muted strum. So what Ed will kind of do is sort of pull his index finger up the string slowly for that up strum before doing the down strum. So just going from the first 2 X's into that up-down strum, it would kind of sound like this. From there's an optional slap on the neck of the guitar with your left hand, followed by another muted down strum, and then another slap on the neck of the guitar with your left hand. So if we're just looking at the sort of strumming block here, including the lowercase x's, it would sound like this. Without the lowercase x's, it would just sound like this. So do whatever you want to with this block. So going over the first 2 blocks together, they would sound like this if you were to include the lowercase x's. Without the lowercase x's, the first 2 blocks would sound like this. Moving on from there, you have an optional slap on the neck of the guitar with your left hand, followed by a slap near the sound hole with your right hand. And again, you can leave out that lowercase x if you want to. You then have a muted down strum, followed quickly by a slap on the guitar with your right hand near the sound hole. And then you have an optional slap on the neck of the guitar with your left hand. So going back a little, those last 3 blocks I just went over, if you include the optional slaps on the guitar with your left hand, would sound like this. Without the optional slaps with your left hand, what we just went over would sound like this. So everything together so far, if you were to include the optional slaps with your left hand, would sound like this. If you leave out the optional slaps with your left hand, everything we just went over would sound like this. Alright, so moving on, this is actually where this percussion pattern starts to repeat itself. So you're back to doing those 2 quick slaps on the guitar with your right hand, and then you sort of have that muted strumming block with the optional slaps with your left hand. And then you have that optional slap with your left hand, followed by a slap with your right hand. But the difference here now is you now end this by just doing a muted down, up strumming. Other than the muted down, up strums at the end, the rest of this second half is exactly the same as the first half. So the second half of this percussion line here would sound like this. So the entirety of the second percussion line here would sound like this. And so the last line here I have is just some muted strumming, and this is strumming pattern 7 that we went over before. And so this would just sound like this. And you would play this strumming pattern 2 times. And so that's the entirety of part 5 of the second half setup. So what I'll do now is show you how to transition from part 4 of the second half setup into part 5 of the second half setup, how to play part 5 of the second half setup, and then transition into part 6 of the second half setup. So now we're on to part 6 of the second half setup, which is actually the last part of setting up this second half of the song. What you're going to want to do is to go onto whatever track that you've been recording your beatboxing onto before, and you're basically just going to be beatboxing and singing what I have shown up on the screen. Now, if you need a rehash on the sounds that you should be making based on the letters that I have shown up on the screen, refer back to the layer 1 of the track 2 section during the initial setup of this song in this tutorial. So with that out of the way, the first 2 lines I have shown here are actually the exact same thing, and they would sound like this. One time a little slower. So like I said, you would just do them twice. That would fill up 1 loop length. Moving on to line 3 here. It's pretty much exactly the same as lines 1 and 2, except you're replacing that last scratching sound with another bass sound. So line 3 here would sound like this. And there's just a little bit more time in between those last 2 bass sounds. So again, line 3 would sound like this. And then line 4, you're back to doing what you did for lines 1 and 2. So again, that sounds like this. So all together, all 4 lines of beatboxing that I have shown would sound like this. And so we're almost done. The last thing that we would add to this track is singing hey about 4 to 5 times. Sometimes Ed will do it 4 times, sometimes we'll do it 5 times. It's totally up to you. So basically right after that last sk sound that you sing during the beatboxing part, you would just say, hey, 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 hey. So that last hey there is optional, again, based on whatever performance you're watching. And so that's all you're adding to this track at this point. I have the numbers 4 to 5 highlighted in yellow to show you that once you're done adding that layer to track number 2, you would then take your looper out of overdub mode, you would put it in whatever mute mode you have, and then right when you get to the end of the next loop length, you would mute track number 4, as that would bring you into verse number 3. So let me just show you how to add all this to the looper now. So what I'll do is show you how to transition from part 5 of the second half setup into part 6 of the second half setup, how to play part 6 of the second half setup, and then transition into verse number 3. Alright, so now we're into verse number 3, and at this point, there's no more guitar playing for the rest of the song. That's at least how Ed does it. If you want to keep adding guitar in, that's totally up to you, but if you're trying to play it how Ed does live, there's no more guitar for the rest of the song. It's just singing, and then turning on and turning off certain tracks. Okay, so looking at verse number 3 here, you're basically going to be going through your loop length a total of 8 times. So for times 1 through 3, you have tracks 1 through 3 playing out while you're singing. Everything's great. When you get to the 4th time through, you would then mute track number 3 and just have tracks 1 and 2 play. When you get to the 5th and 6th time through, you would bring track number 3 back, and that would play out along with tracks number 1 and 2. When you get to the 7th time though, you would then be muting track number 3 again and let that play out for the 7th time through the loop length. And then the 8th time through the loop length, you're having tracks 1 and 2 play out. And as you get to the end of the 8th time through the loop length, around the time that Ed will sing the lyrics "Another Day Close," you would then unmute track number 3 and track number 4, as that would bring you into chorus 3. Alright, so now I'll show you how to transition from part 6 of the second half build-up into verse 3, how to play verse 3, and then transition into chorus 3. Alright, so now we're into chorus 3, and again, there's no guitar playing. For chorus 3, you're going through your loop length 4 times in total, and all 4 times, you're having all 4 of your tracks play out. The only thing is, as you're nearing the end of the 4th time through your loop length, around the time Ed sings the words "Don't Need You" for the last time, you would mute tracks 1, and then 3, and then 4, to then transition into verse number 4. So now I'll show you how to transition from verse number 3 into chorus number 3, how to play chorus 3, and then transition into verse number 4. Hey! 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 so now we're into verse number 4, and we're going through our loop length a total of 8 times. Times 1 and 2, you just have track 2 playing. For time number 3, you of course still have track number 2 playing, but you're going to want to stop your looper about halfway through around the lyrics "skin laxta," and that's also when you would unmute track number 3. Time number 4, you're kind of alternating between playing and stopping tracks 2 and 3 a total of 4 times, and the first time that play and stop happens is around the lyrics "do it for." The second time is around the lyrics "ever since." The third time is around the lyrics "hit the," and the fourth time is around the second half of the word "mainstream." So more in that stream part. Times 5 and 6, you have tracks 2 and 3 playing out again, but you would mute track number 3 kind of near the end of the 6th time through the loop length. Times 7 and 8, you have track 2 playing out, and you would unmute tracks number 1, 4, and 3 in that order around the lyrics "back to rapping." And that would bring you into chorus number 4. So now I'll show you how to transition from chorus 3 into verse 4, how to play verse 4, and then transition into chorus 4. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. All right, so now we're into chorus 4 here, and similar to chorus 3, you're going through your loop length 4 times, and you have all 4 of your tracks playing out. A slight difference here actually is that you're not muting any tracks near the end of the 4th time through your loop length, because you're actually going into a post-chorus next, where all your tracks are still playing. So now I'll show you how to transition from verse 4 into chorus 4, how to play chorus 4, and then transition into post-chorus 4. Hey, 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 Alright, so now we're into post-chorus 4, and you're going to go through your loop length 6 times in total. Times 1 through 4, you have all 4 of your tracks playing out, everything's good. When you get to times 5 and 6, that's when you would mute track number 4. And so time number 5, you have tracks 1 through 3 playing out, and then the beginning part of time 6, you also have tracks 1 through 3 playing out. However, you would mute tracks 2 and 3 as you get to the end of the last "ooh" that's being sung. So now I'll show you how to transition from chorus 4 into post-chorus 4, how to play post-chorus 4, and then transition into verse number 5. On to verse number 5, and you're going to be going through your loop length 8 times in total again. Times 1 through 6, you just have track 1 playing. When you get to time 7, you have track 1 still playing out, but you're going to want to stop this track about halfway through around the lyrics "truly broke." And that's also when you're going to want to unmute tracks 2, 3, and 4. And then time 8 through the loop length, you're kind of playing and stopping all 4 of your tracks again, similar to what we did in a previous part. And you're going to be doing this play stop 4 times in total. The first time happens around the lyrics "melody music." The second time happens around the lyrics "reading all." The third time happens around the lyrics "they say." And the last time happens around the lyrics "coming like." So now I'll show you how to transition from post-chorus 4 into verse 5, how to play verse 5, and then transition into chorus 5. Hey! Alright, so now we're into chorus 5. You're going through your loop length 4 times in total, and you have all 4 of your tracks playing out. That's it. So now I'll show you how to transition from verse 5 into chorus 5, how to play chorus 5, and then transition into post-chorus 5. Alright, so now we're at the final part of the song, post-chorus 5. Similar to chorus 5, you're going to be going through your loop length 4 times in total, and all 4 of your tracks are playing out, and it's at the very end of the song is when you would hit stop. So now I'll show you how to transition from chorus 5 into post-chorus 5, how to play post-chorus 5, and then finish the song. And so that's the entirety of the song. So what I'll do now is do a full playthrough of the song to give you something to practice and play along to. Enjoy. And so that's the entirety of the lesson. If you enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to like the video and leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any future tutorials. Thank you.